Welcome to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast with Darren Mitchell. If you're a sales leader looking to take your leadership to a whole new level, then this is the podcast for you. We'll be exploring tips, techniques, and strategies to help you take your leadership to the exceptional level and allow you to enjoy more money, more meaning, and better sales results.
The biggest blood donors in the world right now.
The biggest in the world?
One of the biggest, in the top 0.1% of blood donors in the world, as one of the things I do at the moment.
Well, welcome back to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast. And I'm just going to probably leave that in there because we've just heard a mic drop moment. I'm talking to a man who's in the top 1% of blood donors on the planet.
0.1%. Top 0.1%.
That's even better.
Absolutely. It all matters. It all matters. Yeah, I donate every 2 weeks in the UK, platelets and plasma, three bags every 2 weeks. I'm saying my number is I've saved over 1,000 lives so far and going strong. So yeah, have to keep going.
That is phenomenal. That is phenomenal. And obviously you don't have a fear of needles, so that's a good thing.
That's true. Yeah. No, if you don't like needles, then sitting on a dialysis machine for an hour, sucking all your platelets out is not for you. So yeah, there you go.
All right. I must introduce you to our listeners. Andrew, is it Hulbert?
Hulbert, that's correct.
Hulbert,
yes.
Andrew Hulbert. Welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you. The 0.1%. Oh, hang on, 0.01%. Which was it?
No, not 0.1%. You know what? The stats matter in sales, don't they? So we've got to get those points correct. Yeah,
you've got to make sure the decimal point is in the right place. Otherwise, you can make a really difficult, challenging mistake.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So, Andrew, greatly appreciate you joining. You're coming in all the way from London. It is early in the morning over there. It's evening as we're recording this in early October. You're the founder and vice chair at Pareto FM. You've got a really interesting background. Just looking at your LinkedIn profile, you've got your fingers in lots of different things. Do we call you like a lifetime serial entrepreneur, or how do you refer yourself?
I don't know. These days, I just count myself as a retired guy that lives on a farm. In the last 10 years, I'm not sure what's just happened. It's been a bit of a whirlwind, to be absolutely honest. Yes, I like to think I'm a serial founder within business and within social value and like charity space. That's really what my focus has been on.
Nice. Well, I'm really looking forward to this conversation. As I shared with you before we press record, I showed you my list of questions, which was the blank sheet of paper. And for those people that do listen to the podcast, you know that these conversations can go in any which way, but they're always going in a direction that we need to go in. So I'd love to delve into your journey and some of the lessons from obviously exiting, or you're still part of Pareto FM as a vice chair, of course, but a little bit about your background and where you came from and what kind of led you into the pathway of being the entrepreneur, running this business, but also the social side as well. Was there a specific catalyst that led to that?
Yeah. I won't bore you with the whole story because we'll take up a whole hour just talking about it. I will paraphrase the story for you. So in the UK, we have what we call a council estate, which is sort of low-income families, government-funded estates. So my family is from that sort of background. So I've been working class, as we say, for my whole life. My dad was in a factory for 46 years. My mum was in a supermarket for 30 years. So I grew up in an environment where we understood the value of money. I had two parents working incredibly hard. And, we didn't have everything we always needed, but there was always a roof over our heads and there was always hard work that went into it. What that did for me, though, is it meant I grew up in a very multicultural area. And as a child, I had lots of different experiences with people from different backgrounds, different religions. I had lots of people who were neurodiverse in my school and things. So I had a really interesting, rich upbringing, which would impact my whole life. And I didn't know at that stage. I had some trouble when I was about 15. I was going off the rails, stealing bikes and getting into trouble and setting fire to bins in the park and all that sort of stupid stuff you do as a kid. And I found alcohol at 15, which wasn't always a sensible thing either. So for me, I was sort of in with the wrong crowd early on. And then we went through our what we call GCSEs, so your exams when you're 16 years old. And then I got into sixth form. So I got into high school, if you like. And a lot of my friends that I went to sixth form with, they didn't come up from where I was before. I met a whole new rabble of friends when I was at sixth form. And they were from like good backgrounds. They were looking to go to university. They had aspirations in their life. So for me, I sort of fell in with the right crowd at the right time. And I went to university and I studied business management. Now, academically, I was only really good at business, and I knew I wanted to run my own business one day because I was such an upstart that nobody could tell me what to do, and I couldn't listen to anybody else. A typical entrepreneur, if you like, right from the very beginning. And even at university, I was selling bikes and fixing bikes and getting paid cash without insurance and all sort of stuff. And then I started playing poker, which I was really good at, and funding myself through university with poker. Anyway, all of that aside, I started to work very hard when I was at university because I thought I better try and make something of my life. And I did an internship over the summer with a facilities management business, just a very small one. And I got on really well with those guys. I finished my degree, and luckily for me, they offered me a full-time job after I finished my degree. And I went in on very low pay, worked incredibly long hours, and was completely taken advantage of as a graduate, but that's what you do. And by the age of 24, I'd risen to ops director, had 250 staff underneath me that I was delivering services to. And then that business got bought out by a big German business. So we went from a 10 million pound business to an 8 billion pound business overnight. And I did that for 2 years. And to be honest, I hated every minute of it. I went from being the king of this very small castle to being nobody within the big corporate machine. And then when I was 27, I woke up one day and I said, you know what, I can't do this anymore. This is too frustrating for me. I'm not going anywhere. And I handed in my 3 months notice, and I literally started Pareto from my bedroom with no backers, no money, no contracts, no processes, no finance system. Literally me and a laptop in my bedroom, in my pants, thinking, what on earth are we going to do now? And that's how it started. That was it. I was literally 27, sat in my room with no idea. And yeah, we went on this incredible journey since that point.
Wow. So fast forward, you built from scratch a 50 million pound business, a nine-figure asset, 500 staff, and you're still now the vice chair at Pareto
Yes.
FM.
So just very briefly. So we went through a 9-year journey. We had 2 private equity exits in that time, one in 21 and one in 23. I was fortunate enough on the second one to be able to exit from operational life. So I moved back to a non-exec capacity. So I was 37 when I moved back from that. That was 2 years ago now. And so now I do non-exec and volunteer stuff. So I don't have a day job any longer. I just support in various different aspects. And I bought a big farm over in Oxfordshire. So now I live on a farm with my family and my kids. We drive around on the quad bikes and pick fruit and make jam and do all that nice stuff that English people do in the countryside. So I'm a world away from where I started.
Love it. And you also donate blood every 2 weeks.
Absolutely right. Donate blood every 2 weeks, and just to keep me interested in doing something. Yeah,
mate. I love that story, and I'm sure there's been people that talk to you about, oh, you must be so lucky, you know, the rags to riches sort of tale and all that sort of stuff. What do you say to people like that, where you started, and you know you better than anybody else? Because what I was going to ask you is, how much of your background coming from middle class and watching your parents work really, really hard, how much was that a driving force for you? And how much did luck play in it along the way as well?
Yeah. So 2 parts of that answer. Number one, I am incredibly grateful for my roots, because what I saw was if you wanted to get something, you had to work very hard for it. But also, I sort of see life as a corporate curve. So you go to school, you go to university, you get a graduate job, you work for 50 years, you retire, and then you die. And I'd seen my parents but they didn't go to university, but I saw my parents go through that curve. Now, whilst the employers they had were fine, they weren't treated particularly well. They were never really celebrated for what they did. Especially my dad, who'd worked in the same place from the age of 15, for 46 years. That's an incredible journey to be on. Yeah. So what I saw is although you could have a good normal job, if you wanted to sort of break the mold, you needed to try and create something for yourself. And I easily could have gone and stayed in a corporate and worked my whole life to do it, but that just wasn't me. Like I said, mainly because I get annoyed when people tell me what to do because I can't do it my own way, and that was never going to work for me. So I had great roots from that perspective. In terms of luck, I don't believe in luck at all, and I'll explain what I mean by that. If I go to 4 networking events in a week and I get 2 sales from those networking events, it's not lucky that I met the person there, because I went out of my way to put myself at that networking event.
Yeah.
And although I'm not necessarily trying to sell, creating the opportunities for conversations to happen that may lead to sales down the line, there's nothing lucky about that.
Yeah.
It wasn't lucky that I wrote 150 articles in the press so that my name would be constantly out there and I was building a stream of things up. It wasn't lucky that we won 40 awards, because we probably applied for 400 awards and ended up winning 40 of them. So, like these things, luck can happen, but only if you create the scenario for it to happen. And for anybody, and on my journey, there's so many people, and entrepreneurs out there will know what I mean. So many people that are negative to you, so many people that say you're lucky and, you got lucky, etc., etc. But you just have to understand, for those people, they don't necessarily know the journey you've been on. They don't know what's going on in here, because, there's a lot of soul searching when you're an entrepreneur trying to make things work. And it can be a lonely place, as people talk about. But yeah, you create your own luck. So just like put yourself out there and see what luck happens off the back of that.
I love that. Can you go back to when you were 27? In your bedroom with your laptop and your pants.
Yeah, in my undies.
And you're sitting there thinking, shit, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? What was the first? Well, first of all, describe the feeling that you had, and then what was it that was the catalyst for you to do something? Was it you had to sit down and create a plan, or you said, you know what, I'm just going to go and do something?
Yeah. So if I'm absolutely honest, the original catalyst was my wife, probably, because my wife wasn't particularly happy that I just left a very well-paid job to sort of run this business. And we had a mortgage for the first time. We didn't have any children at that stage, and children really changed the dynamic, I think, quite significantly. And again, I think if I'm truly honest, as an entrepreneur, for me, I had to do some soul searching, because I was saying to myself, I'm willing to put my house, my relationships, and my marriage on the line to make this work. And I needed to do it, because I didn't want to wake up at 40 and go, oh shit, I've missed that opportunity and this is what I could have done. So I had my wife sort of making sure that I was going to focus on making the money. That was always a good place to start. And I'm delighted to say we've been together for 20 years now, and we're still together. What did I really focus on? So what I did after I started, I'd been working really hard for the previous 6 years on creating a personal brand for me within the sector and getting to know lots of people. So I literally just sat there with a spreadsheet and wrote, okay, who are all the people that I know? And I just started contacting them one by one. Now, I was contacting them in a way that I'd met them so many times before through networking that it wasn't unusual that I was contacting them in the first place, because we already had a relationship. And how the first one came about, there's a jewelry brand globally called Bulgari that people may recognize. Very, very high-end brand. Yeah. They had a 5-star hotel in Knightsbridge that they just built, and it was one of like the top hotels. £15,000 per night to stay in the suite in this place. It's a very, very high-end. I happen to know the chief engineer there, a guy called Jeff, and I contacted him and said, Jeff, here's what's happened. I've started this business. Here's the concept of the business. I'd love to give it a go. And he said, yes. And I was quite surprised that he said yes. And afterwards, I asked him, why did you say that? Because I had no structure or no business or anything. And both of his kids, he was a bit older, both of his kids were entrepreneurs themselves. One of them had a business, and the other one had like a fancy dress shop on the high street. So I think he was like, look, I can see my kids are trying to do this. I'd love to support you. You're about the same age as them. And that's how it started. And it was a £200,000 a year contract, and they paid us quarterly in advance on the cash. So it meant that we were able to actually start to build up some of those basic business things. But that was purely because I had a network already that I could go out and try and hit. There was no guarantee I was going to get any hits, but that was my methodology to begin with. But it all comes back to networking in the first instance, and being a nice guy when you network, not just trying to sell stuff to people all the time, just like help them out.
That's really powerful, actually, as you're talking about that, because people who are listening to this who are in sales probably have sales targets to hit. They've probably got managers
mm,
and directors and chief revenue officers that are hounding them
mm,
every single
mm,
day to hit that quota.
mm.
And there's a lot of pressure, either implied or
Yeah,
direct pressure.
yeah,
So what's your thoughts? Because I've got a philosophy that people will do business with those who they know, they like, they trust, and who they remember. And
yeah.
sales is the ultimate form of service. So going to look
Mm,
for how I can be of service to somebody, how I can help
mm,
somebody, and not
mm.
necessarily go with what we call commission breath and try to make a
Yeah,
sale to every person you come into
yeah,
contact with.
yeah,
Just talk a little bit about, I guess, your approach from the early stages. And yes, you've had a
yeah,
network to build from,
yeah.
but going back into that, was that just
Mm,
something you intuitively knew what to do because you're a good person, you wanted to connect with people? Or do you think
mm.
looking back, it was like a strategy, but it wasn't necessarily a conscious strategy at the time?
Yeah. It's a really good question. Do you know what? I think it was a strategy that wasn't a conscious strategy at the time. If I just go back to my roots, my grandfather, so the Hulbert name is an unusual name, Hulbert. It's not that common. So anytime he saw the Hulbert name written down in a newspaper or something, he would cut it out because he was really proud of the Hulbert name that he'd given to us all. So I sort of, when I started getting into magazines and things, it was mainly so I could go, hey, Gramp, here you go. Here's another picture of me with the Hulbert next to it. And that's honestly how it started. And of course, there's an ego thing every time you see your name in the press or the paper or whatever and start building it up. So for me, I think inadvertently, I'd started creating this character, if you like, about Andrew that was not only was I sort of out there showing positive messages about the sector, but I was a lot younger than most people at that stage. I was in my early 20s when I started to build that up. So
Yeah.
it was right from the very beginning. And actually, in our sector, I mean, the stats are well known, but 85% men in our sector, and about half of them are over 50. So that tells you a lot in terms of what you need to know about the makeup of the sector.
Yeah.
So I could stand out because of that. But the other thing was, I really wore my values on my sleeve very early. So things like promoting LGBT plus, Black Lives Matter, neurodiversity, men's mental health. I spoke about all those things in a very open and tolerant way because I believe in supporting diversity. Now that's okay. Some people hate it, and look, we're in a
Mm.
world at the moment where a lot of people hate that. And but this is 10 years ago that I'm talking about. But you also have some people that love it beyond anything else because they're like, wow, no one is talking about these things.
Mm.
And all of a sudden, we have this young guy that's trying to change the sector and transform how things are being done. Just for context, this sector is £100 billion in the UK per annum. And there are 125,000 service providers that work within this sector here and 1.2 million people employed. This is a very, very big sector. So for me, it was about trying to carve out my niche within it
Mm.
as a young person, but also with my values-led approach. So then when I was meeting people at networking events, they almost had something to talk to me about because they were like, oh, I saw your campaign on X, Y, and Z in a positive way. And then that's how the conversation starts. I should just note two things. I did not ever sell a pound or by contacting someone on LinkedIn and saying, hey, can I sell you these services? And I never went into a networking event knowingly with the commission breath, like you said, trying to sell things to people. Because I love that phrase, by the way. It's absolutely right. That's just not where I was.
But through that process, you have built a rapidly growing
Yeah,
and very well valued business. That is, I mean, just talking
absolutely.
about the size
Yeah.
of the facilities management business in the UK, let alone globally. Because
Yes.
the question I was going to ask you then is the differentiation. Do you think the way that
Mm-hmm.
you brought yourself into situations, the importance of your personal brand, helped
Yeah.
you with the differentiation against all the others in the marketplace? It said, hey, we're going to carve out something. There's something different about Andrew that I don't know, we may not necessarily be able to put our finger on it, but there's just something different that's worthy of exploration.
Yes, that is exactly it. If I could have spoken to you 7 years ago, that'd have been really useful to understand that that's what was happening at the time because we didn't quite get that. But yeah, look, the feedback we would often get, just for context, the competitors we were going up against were genuinely 300 times our size. So you had enormous businesses doing billions of turnover, and you had little old Pareto doing, say, 20 million, 30 million turnover per annum. So we had to demonstrate that we were much better than the bigger organizations. And the way we were able to do that was to sort of take clients on a journey. The way the sector works is there's a lot of big companies that say, hey, client, if you want to work with me, here's how we do it. So client, you do it my way.
Yeah.
We turned it around and said, no, the client should choose how they do these things. So we go and speak to these massive tech brands and say, hey, so like Twitter and Deliveroo and ASOS, like early businesses in the UK as they were growing through, we say, what do you want? And let us build something that's going to work for you. It sounds so simple, but within the sector, that conversation hadn't happened yet. And it was also coupled with the rise of the ESG agenda, certainly around the social aspects of trying to support good causes through business, and the environmental aspects of getting to net zero early, and all those real demonstrable things that we can do within property management. So when you added all that together, and you had a very charismatic CEO founder that was a bit bonkers and was very memorable, and and I'd wear rainbow laces and like ridiculous things sometimes just to try and create that memorability, as you mentioned. And you sort of just got caught up in the whirlwind of this whole sort of like story about where this journey was going. And I mentioned it just before we came on, but things for me about being memorable were things like we used to always get donuts made with logos on of the company that you were pitching to. And not only get donuts, but make sure you get vegan ones and gluten-free ones. So when you go into a room, you hit everybody along that side of the table that you're going to meet, whether they like donuts or not. And if you don't like donuts, then that's a challenge for me, because donuts are amazing. But also the things like the vegan donuts and the gluten-free donuts. Do you know how powerful it is when you have thought about someone's requirements before they've even asked you for them? Yeah. And it's so those little 1% that we talk about in sales all the time. And also I used to take things like bug hotels and like period poverty packs and things that people could take away with them, and they could sort of touch and they'd still look at it at home, or maybe give it to their kids or whatever they were going to do. So for me, I think people were sort of getting swept up on the journey, and the feedback we either had was, wow, we've never met anybody like you before. Yes, we're coming on the journey. Or no, you are so far out of understanding what we want that it's not going to work for us. Now, luckily for me, on more occasions than not, it won. And look, in the end, and I know we'll love stats in sales, we were winning 8 out of 10 pitches at one point in our heyday. And that's how our growth really started to grow quite significantly.
So 8 out of 10. So as you were talking there, the one word that came in was disruption. It's almost like you're disrupting the industry, saying that all the old suits, for example, said, this is how we do stuff. We're a corporate structure. We're going to work with you, but you have to work according to our frameworks and so forth. And you've come in and said, no, whatever you want, we'll create it. We'll co-create with you. And that's also stickiness, right? Because it's very hard to then extricate yourself from a relationship where you've actually co-created something. Now, as long as you deliver according to that, of course, which is really important. But the memorable part is, irrespective of whether they ate the donuts or whether they ended up doing business, because you still have to be price competitive and you still have to deliver according to expectations. The fact you've had that thought leaves an impression upon those people to say, this person's different. And it may not have been business that you did with that organization, but I'm sure they would have people who would actually refer to you because they were probably a better connection to you or better match to you. Yeah.
I tell you what, when I write my book one day, you're going to help me write it, Darren, because that is exactly the sort of thing that is correct in that. Do you know that I called it relationship marketing in the end? Because for us, it was telling the story in a really positive way. And like I said, sometimes it wasn't for everybody, and that's okay. But we mainly grew through word of mouth because people were hearing about this story within this sector. And look, especially in London, there are so many buildings in London that need management of them that there is enough of a market to go at to try and do. And then you go a bit further north within the UK and then south, and you sort of sprawl out from where it is. But it was people wanted to come on the journey and they heard about it. And we didn't have a sales team until we're about 7, 8 years old. It was quite late that we added a sales team in because we were just creating all these opportunities for things to happen. And as an entrepreneur, one of the biggest challenges you had was I always got very frustrated when I could see lots of opportunity, but we couldn't convert it because we weren't big enough yet at that stage. And that was a constant frustration in my time. So then eventually I got out my own way and realized a sales team would be really useful, and I can't do everything forever. And then, of course, as soon as we did that, we had massive growth off the back of that sales team. And that really worked for us in terms of what we were doing.
Wow. Because the question I was going to ask you around that, because often founders become or are the best
Mm.
sales people for their organization, particularly if they've
Yeah,
created a service or created a product, because nobody can sell it with such,
yeah,
I guess, charisma and gravitas as a founder can,
yeah.
because it's their baby, literally, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, I'd love to ask you in terms of the fast growth, how did you enable it to be sustainable? How did you sort of
Mm.
control it so it didn't get out of control, particularly around
Mm.
things like culture? So
Mm.
talk to me about some of the growing pains and I guess
Yeah.
your approach to people and how they were a cultural fit, but also still having to drive performance.
Yeah. Let's start with people because people in a so when you've got 500 staff in the end, that's a lot of people that you're trying to control. And there is no secret when you're a 150 person business and you're a 500 person business,
Mm.
culture is very difficult to take from that one place to the other. So for me, it was all about getting the right senior leadership team as we grew through the organization. In the end, we had about 15 senior leaders that worked within the organization, and we gave them all sweet equity. So we gave them all equity as part of being within the organization. Now, sweet equity means that you get it for free when you join, and you only have a value to that if the business is sold in the future and the equity is paid out. So what that meant was these 15 leaders that joined us, we knew they would go on this journey with us because the value of the shares would only come good at an exit event through investment.
Yeah.
Now, what that meant for us is in 10 years of me running that business, we did not lose a single senior leader out of those 15 people. We had 0% turnover. So it meant that everybody in the senior team was part of the culture. They understood the early culture and they understood where we were going. That is a great method of trying to then deliver culture within your organization because the founding fathers, if you like, are there all the way through and
Yeah.
they get to tell the story. Now, just on recruitment, it won't surprise you. I was unusual in my recruitment approach because I didn't care about CVs. Okay, you can give me a CV that says you've done this for 15 years. I couldn't care less. I was like, let's go and have a burger and let's have a chat about it and see what's going on in your life. And
Also
again,
donuts.
also donuts, yeah, you can tell why I put 10 stone on whilst I was an entrepreneur through this whole process. But yeah, so for me then it was about let's have a chat. Now again, the way I recruited was I turned the process round. It wasn't what can you do for me? It was what can I do for you? So why are you coming to my organization? What are you going to be giving up at home to be able to come and work for me? Because I'm going to expect you to work hard if you're coming on this journey with me. And if
Yeah.
I call you on a Saturday, I expect you to answer the phone. It's that sort of scenario. But here are some shares that are going to be worth hundreds of thousands of pounds one day, and you get to share in the success of it. So, like for me, that was my approach. And 15 times I didn't get it wrong through that process, or maybe I did, I don't know, but they stayed all the way through, and that was okay. And yeah, you can imagine the intensity of having a micromanager entrepreneur on top of everything can be very intense as well. So that really was that piece. Sorry, I forgot the first question that you asked before the people piece. Just remind me on that one again.
I don't know what a question I asked either.
But okay, so I think that like the people piece was that in terms of the fast growth and keeping hold of
Yeah,
fast growth. Sorry,
the growing
that's what you
pains.
said. Yeah, right. I'm not sure we ever got hold of it because it grew so quickly. And the challenge with fast growth is so like look, in terms of just context. So in year one, we did like 1 million and then 3 million and then 6 and then 9 and then 14. And then we got to about 20 million. And then off the back of that, we grew to nearly 50 million in 2.5 years. So we went from 20 to 50 in 2.5 years.
Mm.
That was an incredibly stressful process because obviously you've got massive growth compared to what you've done before. The only advice I can really give is you need those great people to be on the bus with you at that stage because you're going to push everybody harder than they've been pushed before within a group. The other thing we did was the reason we had such a good conversion rate of around the 8 in 10 was because we were really considerate around what we bid on. So really, we would only bid on work if we thought there was a reason that we would win. So again, I would sit there personally and analyze, why is that customer going to choose us? And I was thinking in their shoes. If I couldn't answer that question very simply, then I wouldn't go for it. And of course, anyone in sales knows as you go through these big tender processes, you start to know people on, on the other side, or someone in the client team, or another service provider that might already work there. Part of being a good team player across the whole sector is you can start to lean on those relationships and go, oh, what do you think about this one? What's going to really happen? Why are they going to tender? Is it just like a price exercise, which wasn't for us?
Yeah.
And we were like, if they were really disillusioned with the larger companies delivering services to them, we thought we could provide the antidote to that. And that's really what the focus was. But yeah, to be honest, the growth was so fast, certainly after COVID, so in 21 to 23, that sort of time. And that's when we really were holding on by the seat of our pants sometimes, just trying to work out what we were doing. But it was hugely successful, and it worked very well. And we won some of the most prestigious contracts within the sector because we had an amazing team. And the final bit I'll just say, and again, people in sales will know this, even when we were 25 million turnover, so many times we got to the final two, and the client would say, oh, really loved you. You guys were amazing. You'd be the perfect fit for us, but you're just too small.
Nice.
And the small thing, and I call it being friend zoned at that stage. You've been taken all the way, and like you just get let down at the last minute. And so like we got friend zoned a lot. But actually, like you said earlier, you created lots of great stories, and for noise to go around to other people within the sector that then may come to you. But yeah, it was one of my greater frustrations that when we were 5 million, yeah, maybe we were too small, but 20 million with 200 staff, you're not too small at that stage.
That's
but we hadn't done enough of a sales patter to get round that piece. But yeah, that used to happen quite a lot.
But if you look at that and you think, oh, it's going to be disappointing, because you probably look at those companies and say, we are different to the maybe to the incumbent or to the organization they've chosen. And hey, it is what it is, but it didn't stop you, because the mindset there is, hey, the business is big enough and the environment is big enough and the industry is big enough. There's more customers out there. So, okay, we didn't win this one, but
yeah,
and I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but I'm sure based on what I've heard from you and knowing you a little bit now, you wouldn't have been vindictive or telling the organization you've made the wrong decision. It would have been, okay, cool. Whenever you're ready, we're still going to be here. And I'm just curious, in that time, were there any organizations that had made that decision, just said, oh, you're very nice, but then eventually did come back because they didn't get the service they were hoping or they were expecting from the bigger provider?
Yeah, it happened on 3 occasions. I won't use brand names, but yes, it did. And you, Darren, you're absolutely right. And it's such good advice. When you lose, kill them with kindness. Be overly happy about it. Send them some donuts, send them some flowers, whatever. Thank you so much for including us in our process. You made us feel like rock stars that we even got to chat to you because you're such an amazing brand. You are a brand we would aspire to work with in the future. Leave them with that positive taste. Because the other thing, just before I go on to a bit more, procurement people, certainly in the UK, they move around quite a lot. They're not necessarily in the same job forever. Because sometimes we'd be selling to the board, sometimes it'd be procurement, sometimes it would be the property part of the business. But we had occasions where we hadn't won work in a certain organization with a procurement lead. They went somewhere else, called us up and said, hey, come and bid on what we're doing here. And then we won that work. And that we didn't even do any marketing for that. There was one particular occasion where it was a massive beer brand. I won't say any more than that, massive beer brand. And we pitched for them and they gave us the friend zone treatment. They said, loved you, but there's a bigger company. We're going to go with them. 1 year later, they called us back and said, look, it's been a total disaster with this big company. We're actually going to terminate. We're going to terminate early. We are not going to tender. If you are happy to keep your prices plus inflation for what you did last time, and then you guys can come back in and do it. And we did. And it's still a customer today. It's a great relationship based off exactly what you just said, because you end so positively. And I just say as advice for anybody, sectors are small. Even with £100 billion sector that I'm in here, it's small. So like word gets around. And you just have to be really careful about how you treat people and how things happen. And that's why I always think, like for me, it was always about leaving a positive impression on as many people as you could do. Doesn't always work because sales is hard and it's pressured and you have difficult conversations and we're always trying to undercut each other in one way or another to sort of win the business. But also people within sales teams, they leave organizations and go and work for different ones all the time. So whilst they might be representing company X one day, it'd be company Y the next. So you just need to be careful and try and have as many positive relationships as you can. I had very few negative relationships in my time. I'm sure there were many people that didn't like me because I was this sort of like upstart, bouncy guy with all the donuts all the time running around, and that's okay. But yeah, generally it was positive relationships we had.
But that's what makes you memorable. And the thing you can't, and just for salespeople listening to this, and also for sales leaders, you can't be all things to all people. You're going to have certain organizations and certain people within organizations that are going to resonate with you, but you've got to be really clear on who your ideal customer profile is to begin with, right? Who are you going to be a match for? And if you're thinking you're going to be matching with the big behemoths, but you're not there yet, then you're probably kidding yourself. It's good to aspire to that. But what's a customer that is probably commensurate with where you're at right now, who you can actually deliver some value with, grow with, co-create with, to then use that as a testimonial or some sort of benchmark to do more and more. So use it as a stepping stone.
Yeah. And also, like, I think in the world now where everything is internet-based, LinkedIn-based, AI-based, I really think there's this postmodern idea that you go back to like sending letters to people, handwritten letters, and open it. Imagine if you're in your corporate office and a handwritten letter turns up, like you're going to read that and go, what on earth is this? Right? It's like, and it's like, you know, vinyl sales are now bigger than CD sales again, right? It's like we've gone postmodern around the whole thing. Another thing I did once, in Australia, you have, so we call it Just Eat here, but like a food delivery service. So like you go on an app to deliver your food to your door.
Oh, we've got Uber Eats, we've got Deliveroo, all those sort of places.
Okay, got Deliveroo as well. Yeah. So with organizations like that, we were tendering for a similar organization to those. And when we submitted the tender, because we had to deliver something, we got a pizza box made with a pizza cake in the middle of it and all these USB sticks that were different foods that we'd cut out and put into this box. So we effectively delivered a pizza to them that had our pitch in it. Now, it's so silly, but I bet nobody else did that on the day, and we were successful in that pitch. Of course, all the commercials matter and everything else matters, but if you can just do those things every time that are going to create a slightly different experience for that person. And again, another little tip we used to do was honey. So we used to get in Market Harbour in the UK, they made their own honey, but you could get it labeled with any logo that you wanted. So if we were trying to get someone's attention, honestly, send someone a jar of honey with their logo on it. And like, it's just things like this that they're like, maybe they'll just take that call next time you message. Could say, hey, did you get the honey? And like, these things don't have to cost a load of money. And I heard this one's a bit outdated now, but I'd heard someone's strategy was if you wanted to get to a PA to get you a meeting with the big boss, send them one Louis Vuitton shoe and then say, I'll send you the other one if you get me the meeting. Now, that's really old fashioned these days. But, you know, it's those sort of ideas about trying to think outside the box a little bit and think of ways that you can do it. It doesn't have to be expensive. It just has to be creative. And I think there's a real opportunity in certain sectors at the moment for that.
Oh, I love that. Love that. Yeah. Being memorable. And it's as you say, it's just thinking outside the square. It's just being different. And it's interesting you mentioned with the world of AI and all the technology, there are a lot of sales teams that are busy sitting behind their computer screens, typing out emails, doing messages, and using AI to do LinkedIn stuff. But they're not actually going out to the nose-to-nose, toe-to-toe conversation, because at the end of the day, there are people who still want to interact with people because we're losing the connectivity that we had maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah. Look, for me, this is something I really believe in. So when you go to a networking event, it's not necessarily when you're stood there with a glass of wine opposite somebody having that conversation. It's when you both leave at the same time and you walk to the train or the tube or however you're going to get home. Those 2, 3, 4 minutes of interaction as you've dropped your guard, you've had a glass of wine maybe, so like you've changed the scenario. You're not in this sort of corporate bullshit mode anymore because you're both in that room and trying to sell to each other or whatever. And you're sat down and you know what? You're starting to think about what time am I going to get home? Am I going to see my family tonight? What am I going to have for dinner? That is such a powerful time to network and sell to people in a very like positive way without feeling like you're jumping on them, because that's where like memories are created. Now, when you are online and doing all the AI stuff and doing LinkedIn, 1,000 LinkedIn shots a day, that's okay, but you're not creating that human connection. And again, I go back to that sort of postmodern idea, but I do think that getting back out there and shaking hands and seeing people's like responses emotionally to what you're saying, but also understanding your customer, just go and chat to them. What's not working for you at the moment? And like, take what's not working for them and go and sell that to someone else as a problem that you can fix. Because that's the whole point with what I'm saying about the facilities sector that I was in. What we did wasn't new. There was £100 billion a year of it happening anyway. And there were people doing it much better than we were. But it was just about trying to sort of carve out that very small niche. And we understood what the big companies weren't doing very well. And we put that at the heart of what we were going to excel at. So because we knew when we went to speak to a customer and they said, oh, it takes ages to do things, or the billing's always wrong, or the processes take too long, we could say, okay, great. Well, we can fix those things immediately for you. And then hopefully you'd get them to forget about you're too small, you're not structured, you don't have great like actual processes behind the scenes, because this is what they're focusing on over here. Now, that's just the art of understanding why someone is getting frustrated with something and what you can do to fix it. But to do that, you can't really build that rapport on Teams or Zoom. You need to actually be part of being in that conversation. And I always go back to this example. So Xerox in the 1980s, they did a study where when their engineers came back they were all out doing computery things in the 80s. When they came back and were chatting around the water cooler, that is when the most knowledge was transferred within their organization. Those incidental, tacit knowledge sharing conversations. And they couldn't create them. Xerox, it wasn't possible to create that. It just so happened that they would chat around the water cooler. And that's 50 years ago. And I think that is more relevant today, probably, than it was then. And that's a real thing.
Andrew, it's funny you say that. Our state premier in Victoria here is trying to legislate so that people have at least 2 days legislated to work from home. And there are businesses that are saying, well, that's ridiculous because we've got flexible working arrangements. But for the young people, being isolated from home, it's very difficult to have that human-to-human connection. And you miss out on that water cooler conversation, and you miss out on that transfer of knowledge that is organic through those interactions if you're stuck at home doing a Teams call or doing Slack messages or whatever the case might be. So you need to be connected with people. You need to be.
Yes. And that's it. But that's the same in life, isn't it? In terms of like how you make friends and long-term relationships and everything that goes with it. And it's not that different in the UK. We're probably now back to maybe 3 days a week. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday are generally busier days in the office. Mondays and Fridays, not so much. I mean, certainly not Fridays. You may as well write Friday off now. Yeah. And actually, what I've seen in a lot of organization is like beer Fridays has become beer Thursdays, because then people can get a hangover on Thursday night and then not worry about it on Friday. But yeah, like my kids are 4 and 6 now, so they're still very early in their life. But certainly, I will be coaching them to say, get out there as much as you can and just create those networks, because that's how you can create a really like meaningful piece. And then the other, just going off on another tangent briefly, but what I found very early, graphic design was really, really important right from the beginning, because when you're a tiny business, you can look like a tiny business if you get your graphic design wrong. And the one area that I would encourage people to invest in quite early is a great looking set of documents in terms of what a PowerPoint is, what your website looks like. You can create a whole perception of your organization just through some great graphics. And now with websites like Fiverr.com, you can find people all over the world that will create you these things in a relatively low cost way. And I think for me, that is a really important aspect. It took me too long to realize that. And I created our first logo from my bedroom. It was dreadful. And but do you know what? We still sold off the back of it. But why people agreed to buy from us at that stage, I don't know. But with the rise of like AI support around creating graphics and things, really have a focus on making something that looks visually stunning that you are really proud of, because your pride in that will help you to deliver it in a way that will get people on board with it. And so if you ever look at your graphics and go, oh, this is looking a bit outdated and old, and you don't believe in it, probably your customer isn't going to either. So actually really get focused on that piece too.
Well, it's the image and the reputation that you build, isn't it? It's the personal brand that you've got. Now, if you're
Yeah.
representing yourself, then that's really important. If you're representing a company, you've got to make sure that
Mm.
you've got that connected as well. There was a question I
Yeah.
was going to ask you that is
Mm.
linked to the networking and the work that you did. Um, just talk to me a little bit about the disassociation from the pressure of having to make the sale. So you've gone through a growth cycle, because there'll be people listening to this who are either entrepreneurs, they're salespeople, they're sales leaders, and they might be thinking we've only got a finite number of customers that we can actually go and hunt. But
Mm.
we're saying that there's an abundance of customers out there, right?
Mm.
You're never going to run out of customers. So your
Yeah.
approach, so it may be when you were being friended, or you got to the friend stage where, sorry, we're going to go with your alternative. The
Yeah.
power of being able to disassociate from that and then continue to go, because you would have been
Yeah.
disappointed, you would have been frustrated.
Yes.
But
Yes.
how did you use that as a catalyst to
Yeah.
continue to go forward and continue to serve?
Yeah. A really deep question, and those in sales will know you have those deep questions and conversations internally sometimes. How I personally did it, if I'm very honest, I almost created a character of myself and I put on a show. That's how I used to think about it. So when I went into a sales pitch, I was Andrew, the character, who
Yeah.
wasn't the same Andrew as when I was at home, because that Andrew in the sales pitch was full of life, excited, really wanted to be there, had a real zest. Nothing else was important to me that day other than what I was having that conversation with you. Whereas obviously at home, everything else is important to me, not what's happening in the sales meeting. So I managed to dissociate myself personally by creating those two things. However, you also just have to actually take their feedback and just understand what they're really saying.
Mm.
Sometimes you don't always get feedback, but when you do, just break it down and understand what is it that they're actually saying. And of course, the words they write and what they mean might be two different things, because they're trying to put it in a corporate way so that it doesn't ever get them in trouble. But take some time to reflect on it, learn, and then next time you go into a pitch, make sure that the feedback you've got from that one, you're not going to get that feedback again. And that's really powerful advice if you can take it and if you
Yeah.
can read it. My other point would be that when you're growing very, very rapidly, sometimes you don't have time to even care about that. You just have to get on and do the next one, which I'm not sure is great advice, because you need to learn from the bad things that are said about you so you can do it. I'll give you a real example. I can't use the brands because they're huge. We done a pitch and I did the pitch, and the feedback came back. They hated me. They said I was flighty, I was unprepared, I was scrappy, right? Absolutely right. Correct. I am all of those things. I can take that feedback. We then had another opportunity from that household again. And then the next time we went in, I didn't even go into the pitch. I got an air traffic controller who'd been in the RAF for 30 years. And he was as boring and grey haired and grey beard and suit and tie as you like. And I put him in that pitch. And I said, right, mate, here's what you're going to say. This is how you're going to do it. And he won it. And it's one of our most prestigious contracts that we've ever had. I am nowhere near it. I'm not even allowed near the place because I'm too much of a flight risk for them. But I could have gone away and gone, oh, well, forget them. They don't know who I really am. They blah, blah, blah. You've got to get over it. Forget about it. You need to put your best team forward to make sure that you're going to win the pitch. And it's important to take your ego out of the situation a lot of the time and have a look at it and go, what is the best team that's going to go in there? But yeah, I've never had, it was on a formal paper and everything. I've never had such negative feedback written down formally about myself. I still have the letter in my office where I keep a few of the keepsakes. I've still got it, and because it's on special paper. And but there you go. That's the feedback, and that's what it is. So you just have to take it and grow and learn. And also, in my time, there were other competitors who were getting a bit frustrated with us because we came out of nowhere, and all of a sudden, every tender we were there. Every walk around of a building, I was there. I would always do the walk arounds because I could be memorable. And of course, I turned up with the donuts, and I'm offering the donuts to everybody at the walk around, whether it's a competitor or it's the client or it's the security guard. So they all knew I was there. And there was one particular occasion where we had a great walk around, and I'd had a really positive relationship with the customer on there. They were a younger person themselves as well. They really liked the concept of what we were doing. One of the competitors stayed behind to try and discredit us to the customer at the end of the walk around, which is a really bad look, by the way. Like, you do not need to do that. And you know what happened? That evening, the customer called me and said, just letting you know, this is what happened after you left the walk around today. And I'm like, fantastic. Like, if they need to go out of their way to be negative about us, that just shows how... Exactly. And anyway, we no surprise, we won that contract off the back of that. So the fact the customer even contacted me about it afterwards, I thought, we've got a great chance here. But yeah, and like that, but that's just it. Success really frustrates people, especially when they've been doing it for a long time. And with Pareto, just going back to the branding, so in an external survey completed by one of the press associations in the sector, we were the 6th most recognized brand in the sector in 2022. So like I said, there are 124,000 providers in it, and these companies are turning over 8 to 10 billion each. And there we are, we're number 6. And so we're only a 50 million pound company at that stage, even less. And we managed to create this niche for ourselves that people know who we are. And that's without a marketing budget. That's just by telling the story and doing the networking and doing the awards and everything that goes with it.
It's the memorability, isn't it? It's just it's phenomenal. And I love. I know you got to get to the your appointment. I'm conscious of that.
Yeah.
I love the fact that your competitor in that case thought it was appropriate to try to elevate themselves against you by trying to discredit you versus, well, that just tells you more about that organization than it does about, it's free advertising, by the way.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if I could have got them to do it on every walk around, maybe we would have won even more. But I would understand, in this sector, generally a client would go to 2 big ones, 2 medium ones, and 2 small ones. And this was one of the other small ones. So all of a sudden we were always there against them, and we were a bit of a thorn in their side. And we'd won like 5 in a row against this organization. So they were just starting to get frustrated with it. And I understand, but I would still give him a donut if I saw him today. And that's it.
Did you give him a hug, maybe blow him a kiss as well?
Right. Yes. Yeah. Maybe next time, we'll see. I don't do so many walkarounds these days. So yeah.
No, that's awesome. Hey, Andrew. This has been a phenomenal conversation. Really, really enjoyed it, and you've shared lots of pockets of gold, nuggets of gold in terms of whether you're running a sales team, whether you're a salesperson, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're just trying to differentiate yourself in the marketplace. Greatly appreciate you being on the podcast. For people who would like to connect with you and learn more about you, because I'm sure that there's people that would probably want to pick your brain and being a mentor to other business people. Where's the best place for people to connect with you?
LinkedIn is the best place. So if you just go LinkedIn/Andrew Hulbert, you'll see me on there. I don't know if I'm holding donuts or not. I don't think I am in that one, but yeah, LinkedIn.
No, your photograph looks like you're doing a bit of a keynote.
Oh, I am. Yeah, that's one of the keynotes. And if you zoom in on my jumper, it says something rude as well.
Oh, does it really? Okay.
Yeah.
But I was going to say you could be holding a donut but there's not. But the way your hand is, you could probably have a plate with donuts on that. The way it's sitting.
I did do a podcast once where I had a tray of 9 donuts with a load of candles in at the end. I'll have to share that with anybody if they want to see the donut stuff.
Brilliant. Hey, Andrew, I know you've got to get to your appointment to donate more blood. So I just want to thank you for coming on the podcast. It's been a phenomenal conversation, and all the very best, my friend.
Thank you so much. Really, really enjoyed that today. Thank you.
Good on you. Thank you for listening to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast. I trust the information in this episode has been helpful in your journey towards becoming exceptional. And remember, please take the time to rate the show, subscribe to the show so other people can find it. But also, if I can help you, jump on my calendar, go to leadwithdarren.com, and let's have a conversation about how I can help you along your journey to being exceptional.